Hi, it's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and my friend requested that I show her how to use all of the various piping tips that I have. So as I'm filming this, I'm also giving her a virtual online class. Now I'm going to be using just the basic tips today to show you how to use them. The first thing you're going to need to do is choose the right piping bag. This is a tipless piping bag, but I'm going to show you how to use a coupler with it. Now this one is a little bit more beat up. I'm just showing you that you can reuse these type of piping bags. However, they do burst if you use them too often over and over again. There are several types of couplers that you can use. I prefer this one because it doesn't have a slit on the side. The reason I prefer it is so that I can actually use it as a rounded tip as well without having to get an additional tip. When I'm going to be using multiple tips, I always use a coupler. Otherwise, it's not necessary. Now, those are two different size rounded tips. There are a lot of different numbers of sizes that you can use. Typically, I like to use a number 2 for any time that I'm doing things like this, especially with cookies. In today's video, we are mainly going to be focusing on utilizing tips for thick buttercreams and royal icings. In this macaron video, you'll notice that I am using a tipless bag that I cut a little bit more open, but that larger tip that I showed you earlier would also be a good choice for that. At the end of today's video, I include a screenshot where you can just screenshot all of the techniques that I've shown you with the correct number of tip as well. Now, there really is no right or wrong way to utilize all of these tips. I'm just showing you how I use each of them. So I would use that ruffle technique on cupcakes or cookies or even a cake. This tip is also great for making really simple flowers, and these are great filler flowers. What I'm using today is I'm using a really thick royal icing, so I could save all of these transfers that I'm creating if I wanted to. The next tip kind of looks like a crescent moon, but it does have a textured edge there, so that can create some really cool things for you. Now here I'm just showing you how to easily make this little succulent, I want to say, and I used this in one of my past videos where I made some succulent cookies. It's just really simple. The key with this one though is you do need to make sure that you just squeeze and lift. The other one was more of a fluid motion. This one you want to squeeze and lift. Do be sure to stop squeezing, of course, once you want to end off that petal. This tip is great as well because it creates that texture on the outside without you having to do anything extra. If you notice with any of the tips that you're using today that you're losing some of that texture that you normally have, you just need to wipe off your tip. You can also make a seashell border with this. Just make sure that your tip is facing the right direction. You'll notice that I'm kind of swooping up and then I'm pulling down without squeezing anymore. The next one we're going to use is a star tip, and I will say that this is the most versatile tip, so if you don't want to invest in a lot of tips, at least get this one. So to create this little rosette, you just start in the center, and then you rotate counterclockwise outside. For the rosette, be sure to only go once around, but if you want to create just a classic cupcake swoop, then make sure that you go multiple times until you peak up to the center. You can also create really easy stars. A lot of people that are beginning like to do star cakes that are made out of buttercream, and that's the way to do it. Another border idea is just doing it this way, and you'll notice I'm not lifting my bag at all. I'm just kind of going back and forth. This way, I'm doing the same motion, except at the very end, I swoop off and I stop squeezing. I find this piping work really reminiscent of all the cakes I had as a little girl. Another technique is to spiral, and I noticed this on a lot of drip cakes lately. You'll notice there that I had to retwist my bag, so I just let off and then I kept going. Here is that rounded tip that I showed you earlier that I normally use for macarons, but you can also utilize it for this as well. You can create a really simple border. I prefer the first border that I just showed you, but you can also utilize it to create this little dot border as well. Now with royal icing, you're never going to get rid of that peaking fully unless you use a different texture. You can also make some really simple flowers with this as well. Flowers or butterflies or clovers, whatever kind of has that shape, and you can add some little pearls to the center. The next thing I'm going to show you is this basket weave tip, and you'll notice that one side, if you pipe it, it's just smooth, and the other side is the actual basket weave texture. Now there is an actual technique to creating a basket weave, which I will show you in a future video, especially with Easter coming up. The key to working with this tip is to make sure that you keep it nice and flat. Don't let it go on any of the points or else you'll lose that texture. The next tip here is the Petal Tip. It's a very classic tip. I utilize this for a lot of things. So you can do just the classic little ribbon curl here, but you can also utilize it to obviously make roses and simple flowers. Here I'm showing you two different ways to make the flowers. One way I show you with the fat side pointed outwards, and then the other way I'm going to show you is with the thin side pointed outwards. You'll notice that each of these petals, I'm really doing the exact same thing, but you end up with a totally different look for every single flower. Now, I will say the way I'm showing you how to do this is a little bit awkward because I'm working on a flat surface instead of that flower nail, so make sure that you use one of those if you're creating the flowers. Also, if your texture of icing or frosting is thick enough, you'll be able to overlap these. All right, now moving on to the grass tips. I much prefer that larger grass tip, but since I have this particular grass tip that can fit on this coupler, I'm going to utilize this. And really, honestly, the trick with using the grass tip is just to hold it straight up and down and squeeze and make sure you layer as well. And of course, once you want that grass to stop, you would just pull off. I also utilize this tip to create things like noodles or hair. Earlier, I talked about how I like to use this particular coupler because it doesn't have a slit in it, so that way I can just utilize it like a large round tip. And this is exactly how I pipe classic macarons. This is a type of fancy leaf tip, and you can utilize this to create this kind of leaf border. It's really the exact same motion that I've been using the whole time, same one as my seashell border and the other borders that I've shown you. And of course, you can utilize it to make petals or leaves. This is my favorite way to utilize this tip. It looks absolutely fabulous. If you guys watched my succulent cookie tutorial the other day, I use this as a filler. So anytime you feel like a cake looks a little bare or not well put together, or a cookie for that matter, I feel like this tip just really helps you out. Now, I have seen it where this kind of ends up not looking like a leaf. The trick to it is to make sure that you squeeze, and when you pull off, you kind of just pull either straight off or you slightly angle it so that it actually cuts off that leaf properly. You can also utilize this to create petals. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that the way you're holding the tip is proper. So if you notice it's not really turning out like a petal or a leaf, you're probably holding it the wrong direction. So you'll probably just need to flip it so that it lays nice and flat. And this is the beginning of a sunflower. I would keep going. So if you just recently went out and you purchased a bunch of tips, but you're a little intimidated by some of them, or maybe you just didn't know how to utilize some of them and you've had them for years, this is how you utilize most of them. Of course, there are some tips that I did not go over, but I will cover that in another video. The success of all of this, of course, relies on the texture of your buttercream or royal icing or whatever it is you're utilizing to pipe this. Please take the time to screenshot this so that you can have it on hand the next time you're in a store and you're purchasing a bunch of tips and you want to know what ones you're supposed to get, or you can just have this on hand when you're working and decorating. My apologies for that little error there with my 104. It was really hard to format that. I know it seems really simplistic. This is a little teaser from the next video that I'm going to output regarding piping. So I know I didn't show you how to make anything really super 3D. So I am going to be making a part 2 follow-up video to that to show you how to pipe all of the different types of flowers. And I'm going to be giving you a more detailed tutorial on how I utilize these different techniques on cookies. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading daily, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!